Coming to you live from deep within an icy radioactive wasteland, we are the survivors of the social justice zombie apocalypse. The few, the brave, the bitchy, once more wading into battle against the zombie hordes with Rantzerker number 21, How to Raise a Slave. This is your host, Alison Tiemann, and with me as always is Girl Writes What, right?
Hey, howdy.
Okay, so why don't you cue up the
Oh, okay. All right.
let's do the queuing.
Queuing it up.
Alrighty.
I am raising my son as a feminist.
Oh boy. Oh boy. From Huffpost.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Let's do this thing.
Go. We're going to do this thing. Okay, I'm going to turn it up so that everybody can hear.
I'm the mother of a young son, and I'm raising my son as a feminist. It's 2015, but sexism...
Jesus fucking Christ. It's 2015, folks. It's 2015. It is the actual current year. So why haven't we done X thing?
Okay, well, I can understand that. I like V does this quite a bit. Oh, and here's what, journalism is. 2015. Moving on. So I can understand the idea that, people would have expected greater progress at this point than has occurred. I think most people who think that way are being unrealistic about how cumbersome it is to, how difficult it is to, they think society should behave like a speedboat and not like an ocean liner, right? It should be able to turn on a dime and, and just things just really happen like you want them to happen. And so they're just going to happen right away.
Because it's 2015.
Because it's 2015 already, damn it.
It's 2015, bitches.
And this all should have happened by now. Well, no, it's a little bit more difficult to change the trajectory of a giant, huge, fucking complex mass like society, right? It's a lot easier to change like one person's mind than it is to change an entire society. So this just seems to be a completely unrealistic way for people to view things. So
yeah.
Moving on.
Yeah.
everywhere, and fixing that, it's my job. And
Okay, reduce it. Go back a bit.
But sexism is, well, everywhere, and fixing that, it's my job.
How is it your job? Well, wait. Let's unpack that for a second. So you are a mother of a feminist son, and it's your job to fix sexism. Well, who created it in the first place? If you are the one, if it's your job, then you have the ability to fix it, assumably, right? Assuming you have the ability to fix the sexism. If you, as a mother, have the ability to fix the sexism, and it's your job because you're the only one with the ability, then who created the sexism in the first place?
Oh, don't ask those questions. Then we might have to cite research that children learn sexist attitudes primarily from their mothers.
Yeah. But then that begs the question, if children are learning these attitudes from their mothers, and mothers have this incredible power and privilege,
yeah,
and usually they call it privilege when you have power,
yeah,
then what you're doing is you're undoing what other women did in the past, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
Other women's decisions about how society should be run, you are undoing them and replacing them with your own decisions about society. Okay, fair enough. But then you turn around and say the real problem with previous society was that men were in charge. And yet, at the same time, you're asserting that women are the prime... that men that have privilege. Well, isn't this a privilege to have the power to determine the... Boy, that derp face is distracting.
I know. I'm actually just staring into it because her one eye is just kind of looks a little bit, her eyelid looks like she's got a little bit of the Bell's palsy going on.
Or they drug them up, or they drug up before they go on to these things?
Maybe, I don't know, but
Do our eyes usually, like when you're blinking, do you usually blink one eye and then the other?
I don't know.
It's just, it seems a little bit. Sorry guys, her derp face is just like distracting the hell out of me. She looks, I mean, maybe it's just the fact that we paused on this particular frame, but it looks like she's blinking one eye and then the other.
Yeah, no, and
like a lizard.
I'm trying to actually figure out whether I blink my eyes simultaneously or whether one's faster than the other, and it's really hard to tell.
Yeah, I'm doing this. You can't really tell with yourself. Yeah, we'd have to do a video of ourselves and then do this and pause periodically to figure out if we also do this.
Yeah.
But this is just a hilarious face that she's. Okay, all right. So the point is that women have the power to change these sexist attitudes. Well, that means they had the power to create them in the first place, and then you blame men for them. Okay, that's not fair.
No, it's not.
All right.
Moving on. Huh.
And it's my job. It's my job and your job too. Oh, and dads, wait, scratch that. All men. You
All men what?
are half of this equation. And
Yes, they are.
Half of the equation.
Yes, men are half of the equation. And
Well, that's actually progress, because usually they say that men are 100% of the equation.
yeah,
And actually, technically, men aren't half of the equation, because dads don't have half of the access to children.
that's right. That's true.
Statistically, I mean, there's probably, you have like 50% of children being raised in intact families, but for the most part, the dads aren't the primary child carer. So
Yeah.
you probably could average that out to 50% of dads have 30% access to their children. And then you have all of the dads who are not actually, that are divorced, and only about, I think, 5% of them have full access. So you could give them 100% access to their children, just as an average, but they probably do, they don't take their kids away from their moms. So probably 100% is excessive. And then you got all the dads who see their children not at all, or I think 50% of divorced dads don't see their children after about a year at all. And it's not because they don't want to, it's because they've been forced out of their lives. And their children are now calling another man daddy.
Yeah.
So they got like
a lot of the men who do have access to their kids, they only see them every other weekend, because that's what joint custody is for a lot of dads. This is one of the reasons why all of those things that feminists cite, saying, courts aren't biased against fathers, because when fathers seek custody, they get custody. Well, yeah, when custody amounts to every other weekend, which is the exact same deal that a lot of fathers without custody get, they get no custody but visitation. That's not the custody they were seeking. That's not the custody that they were looking for. So when you look at 85% of single parent households are single mother households, and of the other 15%, less than half are single father households, and the others involve children who have been put into care or given to the grandparents or other family members of the mother. So, can we really say that it's men who are constructing these values in children?
Well, first of all, I mean, this is the first. I mean, we're explaining the first big fat fail that this particular film engages in. And we're discussing the exact statistical percentages. Only 50% of men are in the house with their biological children. Of the other 50% who've had their children, have about 10% have access, mostly full-time access to their children. And then you got the other 90% that gets 50% of those have absolutely zip access.
Yeah.
And then you have the 50% of dads who maintain about 4 days out of every 28 access, which is, let's see, 4 times 5 is about 20%. Not even, I think. 20. God damn it. My math skills are fucked.
Oh, God, like breaking down the statistics is like a pain in the ass. But
I know, but it's something, okay.
I think everybody
divided by 28 is 14%. 14% access. So we're looking, this is not a half situation.
No.
Feminists, you can say that men are half responsible for the children and the sexist attitudes in society when men get half the custody.
Yeah.
When men's relationships to their children aren't thrown away in the convenience of their mothers.
Yeah.
Which means that even when men have access to children, in many ways, they have to kowtow to what the mother says in order to maintain it. So, you big fat fucking liars.
Yeah.
You are putting 50% of the responsibility on people who do not have 50% of the rights. And when men have 50% of the rights when it comes to child custody, then you can give them 50% of the responsibility. But from where I'm standing, men have barely 20% of the responsibility for the sexist attitudes in societies. So if you want to know who is responsible for them, look in the fucking mirror.
All right, Alison. Why don't you tell us all how you really feel?
I will.
Okay, moving on.
It starts at my house and your house. What we say, it matters. It
Yeah.
Yeah, it does.
means teaching our kids that boys and girls can do anything.
It means throwing out those old-ass gender.
Boys and girls can do anything?
Yeah, I don't think we've been telling boys that a lot lately. We've been assuming that boys know it and don't need to be told.
Oh, wait, let's look at this. What if feminism not say that girls can do that boys can? Domestic violence, rape,
Yeah.
crime, aggression. These are some things that and girls do them statistically too. You look at the statistics; they're there. They support the fact that girls rape, girls engage in domestic violence. In fact, in some statistics, they show that the girls engage in more domestic violence against their partners.
Particularly in young dating populations, yes.
Yes. So are you telling the world that girls can do those things too? I don't think so. In fact, you are promoting boys taking the full responsibility for domestic violence and rape. Full responsibility.
Yeah, and not men either, because it's boys. It's fucking boys who that article on Fox News that said her 3 boys had been ushered into an assembly about the speaker was a man whose daughter had been killed by her partner, right? And all of the boys were forced to stand up and take a pledge that they would never ever 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 harm a woman or a child. And she said her 17-year-old or whatever, her oldest, had just like walked out. He was just like, fuck this shit, and walked out. And she was proud of him for doing that. But yeah, no, this is the message boys are getting, is that you're 100% responsible for all of this, for violence against women and domestic violence and sexual violence and all of these things. You as boys are responsible for it and need to pledge to not do it. And the reason that the stupid excuse that they give is that on average, men are stronger than women and men are bigger than women. And so therefore they have a responsibility to never hit back, to never inflict any harm against somebody smaller than them. And that's a noble thing. You don't freaking inflict harm on somebody who's smaller or weaker than you. But what that does, if you don't have a corollary pledge, right? And the pledge should be, I as a woman will never take advantage of my privilege, right? Of being the smaller one who will be seen as the victim. And therefore I will never feel like it's my right to just fucking beat on my partner, knowing that he can never hit back without the authorities coming down hard and heavy on him, right? And I will not take advantage of the fact that he has been socialized to never hit me, to give me license to beat the shit out of him whenever I feel like I need a punching bag, right? We never make girls take that pledge. right? That they will not abuse their privilege as the perceived victim class when it comes to violence against their male partners. We never ask them to do that.
Of course not. We never make girls take responsibility for their half or more of domestic violence and rape. So yeah, you feminist, you're not really about the gender equality. And
No.
and the other thing is that simultaneously with not getting girls to take their responsibility for being evil, or doing evil rather, you falsely present girls as victims, as victims relative to boys, without really a very strong statistical basis for that. So you're also screwing over girls in all of this. Yeah, and look at that. Okay, I know I'm going to get shit for this again. Look at that smug, contemptuous, sanctimonious expression.
Oh, I got the big, look at this. It's a big cursor because I was moving it fast. That's awesome.
Okay, all right. We see this expression constantly. And you know what this expression is? She's having a little mini orgasm as she beats on someone else morally. That's that expression.
Yeah, moral superiority.
And that expression, I've read about anger. You don't have to worry. Anger is, when you're angry at someone, it is a last-ditch effort to get them to listen to you and respect you as a person. What you really have to worry about are expressions like these cock-eyed, asymmetrical expressions of contempt. She has decided that she is your moral superior. And that's what all of this is. This is setting up women as men's moral superiors without men's consent. So this itself is actually hateful. What this Huffpost Live put out is hateful towards men, because its base at its only purpose is to establish women as men's moral superiors without men any say in that morality, without giving men any say in what kind of moral system they're part of. So this is morality without representation.
It's hubris. All right, moving on.
Do anything. It means throwing out those old-ass gender norms. It means
bullshit.
Yeah, I know. Total bullshit.
What fucking old-ass gender norms?
Oh, that women can be raped by men?
Okay, all right. This is totally fucked up.
Sometimes abuse their wives. We're going to throw that out too. You know, that women can be victims of spousal violence. We're going to throw out that old-ass gender norm. That women are vulnerable, that women need help, that women need support, that women need encouragement, that women need,
but never have to give.
Yeah, no, those are some really old ass gender norms that I
don't move it, Karen, because I want you to point something. You moved it. Damn it.
I can put it back.
Put it, but you might miss it. Look at her pupils.
Oh, they're very dilated. One of them.
No, one of them is larger than the other.
Yeah, one more.
Either she's had recent head trauma or she's fucking drugged out of her gourd.
I don't think so. I think maybe the lighting is coming at her.
Yeah, but pupils aren't supposed to dilate separately. That's something like something's going on chemically or physically with her brain. If her pupils are dilating separately, that's not supposed to happen.
That is kind of weird. All right.
Look at this spit. I'm going to spit my hatred at you. You are me. You are less than me, men. You don't get to decide what morality society operates under. You just serve mine.
Yeah.
Fucking Spider Queen. I did it. I went there.
Oh, I don't even know what that's even referring to.
Neither do I.
Remember it from the last video, and I honestly, the whole the Black Widow thing, that there's a certain number of precedents through history that would make that not necessarily a stereotype. Moving on.
Gender norms. It means teaching our boys that their voices aren't the only ones that matter.
What?
Oh my God. We really have to teach boys that their voices are not the only ones that matter.
Because, you know, we've up to this point in time, we've been so concerned about boys being abused, boys being raped. You know, we've had remember all of those Karen, do you remember all of those campaigns about girls not raping boys and all of those campaigns about girls not victimizing boys? You remember all of those campaigns? And now
finally women get a voice.
Finally women get a voice as victims of boys.
Yeah, no, what they're trying to do, right, is they really do seem to be like wanting to crush the spirits of little boys, right? They want to, like, when you look at how we've raised girls, your voice matters, like, if girls are not up to, you know, acting on these messages that they've been getting since I was in fucking elementary school in the 1970s, for fuck's sake, right? If they have not stepped up and embraced their voice, right, then no amount of silencing boys and crushing their little spirits is going to free girls to express themselves. If, you know, like the whole ban bossy thing, okay? Oh, bossy is just a crusher. It's just a crusher. And it just, it just crushes little girls' spirits. Okay, well, you know what boys are called when they behave like that? They're not called bossy, they're called bullies. They're called bullies. You think that doesn't crush boys who are trying to assert themselves, right? Trying to engage in leadership, you know, and all of those things, and trying to, you know, like just get what they need out of a situation or what they want out of a situation. And they are not called bossy. They are called bullies, right? And increasingly these days, they're called misogynist and sexist and harming the girls, right? But we're not going to do away with any of that. We're going to ramp that up. We're going to ramp all that up, and we're going to tell boys to shut the fuck up and let the girls talk. No matter how bossy they are, no matter whether they're being bullies, no matter whether they're being selfish, egotistical, entitled, narcissistic, whatever, you know, those girls, their voices deserve to be heard before yours, because your voice is not the most important thing. Right? Well, I'm sure it is to that boy. I'm sure that boy thinks his voice is the most important thing to him, just like every other girl, every girl out there thinks that her voice is the most important thing to her.
Yeah. Echo. I'm going to speak for a bit on this. I'm going to have to mute you, though. All right. So essentially, the thing is that they say they allow even girls to speak. Girls and boys. Okay, you're going to have to mute me.
Again?
Yeah, it looks like it's a... So but they do not allow certain types of boys and certain types of girls to speak. You know, the types of girls and the types of boys they do not allow to speak? The girls who want to help boys and actually want to take a role in protecting and making sure that boys are safe too, either from bullies, girls or boy bullies, or from anyone, or from sexist attitudes, that actually want to take a role as my brother's keeper. Those are the girls they shut up. They're not even allowed to even conceptualize themselves until they're well older. They don't have a self-concept that's presented in these lectures. And they also silence the boys who are victims of girls. So they're actually perpetuating their own form of gender roles. Men and boys are predators. Women and girls are victims. That's the gender role they are perpetuating. Yep. And it is stricter than that of a fundamentalist Muslim community.
Oh yeah. No, it's essentially the mere act of boys speaking, right? Or being eager to speak, right, is victimizing girls, because it doesn't allow girls a space in which to express their voice, right? That the mere act of, you know, being excited, right? Being excited and calling out in class without raising your hand, right? That enthusiasm, that exuberance that a lot of boys show, that's actually victimizing. it's not just indecorous. It's not just, you know, sort of a statutory violation like jaywalking, right? No, it's the equivalent of violence against those girls. It's a victimization of the girls in the class, right?
Yeah, well, just to expound upon my point, and I apologize for interrupting, but
No.
the girls who do not want to be seen, who do not see themselves as submissive victims of the boys, those girls are silenced.
Yeah.
You're not allowed to speak if you don't see yourself as a submissive victim of a boy. You can't, and if you are allowed to speak, you're told constantly, "Well, your experience, you can't extrapolate your experience to the greater experience of all women." The only girls who can extrapolate their experience to the greater experience of all women are girls who feel that they submit. They're submissive to the violence. They're victims. They're submissive victims of boys. Those are the only ones who can extrapolate their experience to the greater. What do you think this teaches girls?
Yeah.
What do you think this fucking teaches girls?
Well, and the girls who want to speak out in that way, to say that I'm not a victim, and if I am a victim, I'm not a victim of boyness. I'm not a victim of maleness. I'm not a victim of men and boys as a class. I am a victim of a single individual or whatever, right? Those girls, right? They're told that by expressing that viewpoint, they're also harming all girls.
Yeah, exactly. Any girl who does not believe that she's a submissive victim of boys has to be silenced. Either she's silenced outright by ostracization or not even being allowed to speak, or she's silenced by saying, "Well, your experience can't be extrapolated, but Susie Q over there who's crying mess, who just can't move or think, because the boys, her experience is obviously the experience of all girls."
Yep.
And then they're silenced by saying, "Oh, hey, if you mention the fact that you don't feel like the submissive role of victim to boys is, you just don't feel like, yeah, that's not really me. Well, if you speak out, you're hurting other girls.
Yeah.
So you know what? We'll make you a fucking victim."
Yeah.
You speak out. You say that you're the submissive role of victim to boys. That doesn't relate to my experience. I'm sorry, ma'am. It just doesn't. Well, you can fucking go outside and you can just not participate. And by the way, maybe we'll call the cops on you, you little terrorist.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
And guys, don't worry. I'm a rage professional. I know how to process my rage. Believe me, this pisses me off, though.
No, I mean, like, I hate, you know, like, have you noticed that these kinds of videos, these propaganda videos, right?
Mm-hmm.
They speak so quickly and they jump from idea to idea so quickly without ever fleshing it out. They just assert something, right? And,
Mm-hmm.
and they have lots and lots of jump cuts, and they do, and by the end of it, you often don't, like, it doesn't ever give you time to think about each individual thing that they're saying, each individual assertion that they're making. It never gives you a moment to sort of process it, and you know, it's specifically designed to carry you through extremely quickly without any moment to question anything from beginning to end, right? That's what these videos are designed to do. Right? Like when I make a video, I anticipate the questions. I anticipate the doubts. I anticipate the dubiousness of the audience, or the skepticism of the audience, and I go out of my way through anticipating those things to essentially deal with the arguments that I anticipate they will come back with, or the questions or the doubts, right? Deal with them with evidence and explanations, and I go into kind of long, detailed responses to questions that haven't even been asked yet, because I anticipate that those questions will be asked, right? But these videos, they not only do they not assume anybody's going to question them, but they are constructed in such a way that people don't have time to formulate questions in their own minds before we've moved on to the next thing.
Which is why we have to pause it, like with every 10 seconds. So they throw some stupid shit out, like it's a Goodfellow said. And I love this analogy. We should have Goodfellow on the Rantzerker sometime.
Yeah.
He says, well, yeah, if you turn on a hose full of shit, like it just sprays shit for 3 seconds. Yeah, it only takes 3 seconds to spray all that shit, but it takes hours to clean it the fuck up.
Mm-hmm.
So the instant we hit play button, we're gonna be hit with a spray of shit, and then we have to spend time cleaning it back up.
Yeah.
And people will complain and say, "Well, you're not letting them speak." Well, yeah, actually, we're letting them get out a full concept, a full thought.
Yeah, in less than 5 seconds.
Yeah.
They've gotten out a full freaking concept that's you sort of
has so many implications behind it that are completely unexamined.
Yeah, it's expressed in a soundbite or a buzzword that people just accept axiomatically that this is actually, the case. So, and they accept that it's the case because this has been sort of the norm in society. That these are sort of axioms that we've accepted. These are like the buzzwords. You can represent an entire body of ideas that have already been accepted by the culture with one buzzword, right? If that culture's been exposed to them for 50 years, right, to those ideas, then it just turns into a buzzword, right? And the moment you say the buzzword, everybody knows that it's representing this huge body of ideas. Women were oppressed historically, men were privileged. There was this big patriarchy. The suffragette movement was a man versus woman thing. And the suffragettes were all angels and they got tortured in prison, and all of this baggage that we've learned all gets subsumed under this buzzword, right? So that we immediately understand when they use a buzzword what they're talking about, even though they don't have to explain any of it. They don't have to defend any of it. They don't have to provide evidence of any of it. They don't have to go into their reasoning. They don't have to do any of that. They just have to say the buzzword, and it's just like, oh, we're here now, right? That's the glory of this 50 years or so of like intensive propaganda that feminists have used to essentially generate a set of beliefs in society, that they don't have to explain anything. The people who are going counter to their narrative, right? That's a buzzword. Now I need 45 minutes to explain why it's bullshit.
Yeah, I mean, they can just spout out a single buzzword and we have to stop and explain because there's so much baggage behind it and so much unassumed crap that we have to dissect. But I noticed that her eyes are once again doing the one droopy, one open thing a little.
Maybe it's just her. Maybe it's just like
yeah. But how come they're like, it's not just her. It's also the other one with the 2 different dilated eye pupils. Like, what are they doing? Injecting these people with heroin and then throwing them out onto the screen?
I don't know.
And why do they need to drug them up before they talk?
I have no idea.
That's what they're doing, because it sort of is suspicious.
I don't know. I wouldn't have actually really noticed these things. But I mean, like this woman, she just sort of looks like her face is less than 100% symmetrical. And it's a very, very rare person who has a perfectly symmetrical face. In fact, one of the reasons Elizabeth Taylor that was treasured as such a beauty was because her face was almost entirely perfectly symmetrical.
Okay, to be honest, it just feels like these people are on drugs.
All right. Okay. I'm not going to speculate about that. But moving on.
Sometimes the most important thing to do is listen. It means,
oh my goodness. Listen to whom?
Well, sometimes. Well, when do men get their voices heard? I mean, fuck, you can't even like. We are talking for men because nobody fucking listens to men.
Yeah.
Sometimes you need to listen. That presumes that anyone ever fucking listens to men outside of men being useful or productive.
Well, what they're talking about is telling their 3-year-old sons that, sometimes the most important thing is just to listen to, your mother and your daycare providers and your babysitters and your grandmother and your teachers and all of the girls in your class, and just listen to all of the girls and women around you and don't ever speak.
Your role is to simply do what they tell you.
Yeah, and absorb their opinions and ideas, and that's the most important thing.
God, what a bunch of fucking bigots.
I don't understand how you can raise your kids. Like, even when I got into all of this, right? I never like sat with my kids and ranted about, my work in men's rights, my work in anti-feminism. I mean, like, I allowed them to be exposed to a whole host of different ideas, right? And I have always warned them, right? You have to be dubious about certain things, right? And you have to understand the way human beings work. And yes, when you're 12 years old, son, right, you will obviously be a socialist. You will. It's almost inevitable, right? And that's because you've never had to pay for anything. You've never had to put in the work to provide for yourself, right? So because of that, you don't understand the amount of labor involved in not only providing for yourself, but providing for others, right? And when you get older, your stance on that may stay the same, or it may change given your different experiences of what it is to actually work, be productive, take care of yourself, all of those things, right? This is how I've tried to present these ideas to my kids, right? I didn't suggest the topic that got my daughter a 100% on her oral presentation in Theory of Knowledge, which is an IB, International Baccalaureate course that she had to take. I didn't suggest to her, why don't you do female violence against men and how it's socially condoned and endorsed and just ignored, right? She actually, just through not me preaching to her, but through her listening to my conversations with my boyfriend or watching videos or whatever, or her, exploring the issues on her own, given that I was interested and involved in doing those things at that time, she just decided that this would be an interesting topic to do. Right. And she didn't even tell me she was doing that as a topic until after she got her grade back. Right. 100% on her 100% oral presentation that didn't have any PowerPoint, nothing, didn't have any visual, nothing. She just stood up in front of the class and expressed her opinion on this one thing that she had noticed. Right. And the interesting thing about that is that her teacher, who happened to be a male, after she went to go sit down again, he stood up and said, "Class, I just want to let you know that it's almost entirely certain that if Rachel was a boy, none of you would have taken this seriously."
Yeah, and that's what makes this so fucking ironic, because this is not about changing a problem for girls.
No.
That girls aren't listened to, or that girls aren't seen as being able to do all the positive things that boys do, but none of the negative things. This is teaching boys to shut up and take it. Mm-hmm. That's why I titled this Raising a Slave. Mm-hmm. Because that's what these women are doing. They're teaching their boys to shut up and take it. Because let me tell you something. This woman is telling a 3-year-old boy to listen. And, parents do need to have their kids listen to them, but she's telling the most vulnerable person in society, children, that they have no right to speak, that these boys, these vulnerable boys, have no right to speak to her. No right to say anything about what's happening to them. And boys have never really had that right. I mean, hell, look at the name boy. Boy means servant. Boys have, that's why it was an insult to call a black man boy. Yeah. In the South, because it meant servant. It meant, come here, slave. That's what it meant. That's what boy means. Mm-hmm. And she's teaching boys their role. Their role is to shut up and do for girls.
Yep.
And you can't even say to boys anymore, because your role is to shut up and do for girls, you actually are able to do more than girls. You can't even say that to boys anymore.
No.
Because that would make girls feel bad.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, I mean, we can't even use that justification. Well, boys have to do for girls because boys can do so much more than girls. We can't even use that justification anymore for boys to compel service from servants.
Yeah,
because that's what boy means.
We
can't even use that anymore.
We actually have to translate their in general greater focus on doing, right? Kinetic learning and rambunctiousness and just venturing further afield. Boys tend to have a longer invisible tether than girls do, as far as like every toddler has an invisible tether that, like every 40 feet away from mom, they look back and they check how far away mom is, and once they get far enough away, they're like, yeah, no, I need to go back to my home base, right? Boys tend to have longer tethers than girls do, and they tend to be to just be generally more kinetic, more active, all of those things. And to even suggest that because boys are this way, they're able to do more for girls, that's not okay. Now we have to actually say that their ability, they still have the obligation to do for girls, but
no native ability to do it.
At the same time, their ability to do it is something that nobody is allowed to mention, that nobody is allowed to comment on. We are not allowed to comment that boys might be better than girls at some things. No, never, ever, 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 ever. So you essentially, it's almost like you're handing a girl a PhD and a boy like a freaking ticket in a trade. And you're saying, it's your job, son, to look after her, right? And be responsible for her. But she has no responsibility to even do anything with that PhD she's got.
Well, and it's like, it's also the expectation. I mean, true, there's a situation where boys are naturally better at doing, I think, some things,
yes,
not necessarily all things. I actually think that there are some things that girls potentially do better than boys, and because of that, they should be responsible servants to boys as well.
Oh, yeah, like girls are much better at explaining, even just very young, right? Explaining the complexities of social conflicts and things like that to adults, in order to have the adults, sort of understand what's going on and take appropriate measures, right? But that's a power that girls often abuse.
And they don't recognize it. They simply blanket say boys and girls can do anything boys can do, but boys can't do certain things that girls can do, and girls can't do anything the negative things that boys do. Yeah. And then simultaneously with saying that boys are expected to do for girls, they won't allow that expectation will create a greater ability in boys to do, period.
Yeah.
And it's just like, this is creating slave class. Yeah. This is the kind of rhetoric that creates a slave class. You are expected to do for your betters, essentially.
Yeah.
And the way they create the sense that girls are the betters is by eternally making us believe that boys are responsible for this weight of sin and aggression and violence against girls. It silences them and hurts them and makes them feel bad. That boys, they have to wear this invisible, I don't know, hairsuit, whatever, like this invisible mantle of meanness. And the reason why girls are suppressed is because you're so bad as a boy. That's how we justify that girls are boys' betters. And this is what they're doing. This is the hierarchy that they're establishing. These individuals, these women are establishing. The hierarchy is that they, as women, are on top, and boys are on the bottom. And she is establishing this hierarchy with her son, who is possibly the most vulnerable person in her life.
Yeah.
She's stomping on his fucking head. With every goddamn word that comes out of these women's mouths, they are stomping on their boys' heads.
Yeah, no, and then their boys will be falsely accused of rape in college, and they'll go, "How did this happen?"
All right.
Okay.
Talking about consent and calling by.
Okay. We're gonna.
So we don't have to talk about consent to boys.
Okay. Shh.
It means talking about consent and calling body
Okay.
parts what they are. Say it.
You're right. You're right. This is confusing. Like I think you need to go a little bit further back. Yeah,
Okay.
there you go. Start there.
Sometimes the most important thing to do is listen.
It means talking about consent and calling
Okay.
body parts what they are.
Okay, what? So basically, categorically, they've removed conversation about boys and men's consent.
Yeah, well, honestly, here's the thing. When you're talking about consent with small children, right? And you can be brutally honest with them when it comes to their consent regarding adults, right? And, sort of that stranger danger, pedophile risk that, all kids need to be sort of prepped, and it depending on the kid, right? Like, essentially, my best friend told her son when he was 3 or 4, right? Because her brother had used the word pervert or something within his hearing, and he asked her, what's a pervert? And she said, well, it's somebody who, might offer you candy or ask you to help him find his lost puppy or something like that. But he wants you to go with him, and then he'll do bad things to your body, probably to your bum, and things that you won't like, right? I'm perfectly okay with that. The kid came back 2 months later when she was setting up the Christmas tree to say, Mom, I'm kind of thinking that Santa's a pervert. And she said, why? What makes you think that? And he said, well, because he convinces little kids to sit on his lap by promising them presents, and then he sneaks into your house at night and he watches you while you're sleeping, right? So, kids can actually process a lot of stuff that, and they can handle a lot of information. I think that you would maybe not think that they would be able to. But when you look at how you teach consent to kids, the very, very first thing is keep your hands to yourself, right? Don't poke your neighbor. Don't poke your neighbor, right? Just don't engage physically with any child, right? Without their consent, right? You want to wrestle, you want to do whatever. Hey, if you both agree to it, fill your boots, right? But yeah, no, just keep your hands to yourself if you don't know whether it's welcome, right? That's how you teach consent. You don't teach consent by teaching, boys that they have to ask for, and explicitly receive verbal consent at every single escalation of something, right? And you don't give them freaking a suspension because they, kissed their 6-year-old, quote, girlfriend's hand. Like that's absolutely ridiculous, right? Especially considering women and girls seem to have sort of enjoy carte blanche to touch males. I even used to do it at work, right? Like, you touch a man on his shoulder, whatever. I never thought to ask permission. You sort of know who you can, as an adult, you can determine who would find that unwelcome and who would not. And so when you're joking with somebody and you touch them on the shoulder, right? Oh yeah, I'm just kidding, right? But you never see men doing that. You never see male servers or whatever doing that to men or women, right? Ever, 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 because they know, right? Instinctively, they know that that's crossing a line. It's not allowed. It's allowed of women, but it's not allowed of men, right? So honestly, like, do men actually feel like they could just go around touching people, right? We have this edict, never put your hands on a female, that starts when boys are really, really young. Never, ever, ever lay your hands on a girl.
They're justifying this. Just a sec. They're justifying this with a false reality, a false narrative that everything that they're saying to boys is not already said to boys. That you don't touch girls. Aside, like maybe we have some latitude in the past for, playground hijinks, like pulling pigtails and stuff like that. But for the most part, boys are told never to hit a girl. Boys are told to be conciliatory towards girls. They're told not to touch girls without their consent. These are social attitudes. And these women are actually promoting the idea that we don't teach this to boys. We just allow boys to touch whomever they want. We allow boys to hit girls. We do all of this for boys. And we even promote this. We promote boys hitting girls and raping girls and whatever else. Our society really does promote it. And they're using this false narrative to justify silencing boys and ignoring them when they are victims, and not actually saying, well, girls, maybe you should have a discussion about consent, considering the statistics that are coming out.
Yeah. Well, what bothers me too is that if you go back 50 or 60 or 70 years, it wasn't just the edict that boys not touch women, boys not, without their prior consent. There was sort of an ethic of chaperoning and supervision to make sure boys never took any liberties. And there was also the idea of a boy being able to be taken to task, including physical violence, if he said something some vulgarity in a woman's presence or to a woman that would result in her being upset or offended, right? And so, like, these are like deeply patriarchal norms. These are hugely traditional ways of cultivating gentlemanly behavior on the part of boys, so that they will be courtly and gentlemanly with women when they grow up, right? And somehow these feminists are thinking that we've never taught boys any of this stuff. We've never instructed boys to go through a series of protocols, right? If you wanted, like there was such a thing as a dance card where a man would have to ask a woman, can I be added to your dance card? And then she would decide yes or no, and then he would take his turn, and he couldn't hold her too closely on the dance floor when they were waltzing. And if she didn't like him, she certainly wouldn't choose to dance a waltz with him, right? She would choose to dance a reel or something else that involved minimal contact, right? All of these things. And then he would drop his card off at her house asking permission to call on her. He would actually go to her house and say, I would like permission to call on this young lady, and leave his card. And then he would be given permission just to sit down in a room and have a conversation with her, right? All of these things that young men were expected to do as a form of courtly behavior out of respect for women's sensibilities and vulnerabilities and their ability to be offended and all of these things, right? And somehow we're thinking that the patriarchy that required men to go through these extremely convoluted protocols in order to just be alone in a room, or in a room with a young woman with a chaperone, for fuck's sake, right? That these things, that was all teaching men that, like, ripping bodices was totally A-okay.
I know, and they maintain, like I said, this is all about maintaining a hierarchy, a moral hierarchy, with women on top and men on the bottom, which is incidentally how all slave societies worked.
Yes.
The idea that your ancestors were defeated in battle made you fallen and less moral than your masters. The idea that you were black from Africa, you needed your white mistress to shepherd you morally.
Yeah.
And in again, the Ottoman Empire, the Janissaries were inculcated with the morality, a Muslim faith, which is all about, faiths are all about your moral system. So the moral system they grew up in was wrong. It had to be replaced with a new moral system. And of course, the people who were originally part of that moral system are what? They're not fallen. They are more your moral betters.
Yeah.
And this is how this is created. This idea that a group of people has to earn belonging in order to justify their existence to their moral betters. It all starts with this moral hierarchy that these women are inflicting on the most vulnerable people in their family.
Yeah.
They're inflicting it on them.
Imposing it on them, yeah.
A bit and bridle.
Sorry?
A bit and bridle for their sons, anyway.
Yeah, a yoke. A yoke to wear.
About consent. I'm calling body parts what they are.
Oh, hey, consent. Hey, that's something I was. Consent. Do your boys consent to this moral schema that you're forcing on them?
Yeah.
To your moral dominance? Did your boys consent to being told that they are responsible for all of the ills in society?
Well, if not responsible for creating them, then responsible for fixing them.
Or inheriting them.
Well, and never considering themselves first, always considering, essentially how their actions will specifically harm or help females.
Yeah.
I can understand instilling in your child an idea that they aren't the center of the universe and that their needs are not the most necessarily, sometimes they are the most important thing, but not necessarily. Sometimes it's good to wait your turn. Sometimes it's good to allow the attention to be shared around. Sometimes it's good to consider other human beings. But when it comes to specifically telling boys that their experiences, their feelings, their needs, their wants, all of that are not only less important than girls, but that they have a moral responsibility to promote the interests and needs and experiences and desires and all of those things for the girls around them. That's just like, what are we doing? Like you're essentially saying my 4-year-old boy is an adult.
Yes. No, I guess childhood doesn't last very long for boys. But the other thing is that they're also saying this mythic patriarchy gives boys all of the listening, all of the assistance, all of the value that they don't have to give them because there's a patriarchy giving it to boys. So they don't actually have to listen to boys because of the patriarchy. They don't have to value boys suffering because of the patriarchy. They don't have to value boys having problems because of the patriarchy. The patriarchy does all of that parenting of boys and helping of boys for them. How fucking convenient.
I know, it really is, isn't it?
We don't have to do that for boys. We don't have to listen to them because patriarchy listens to them. You can't prove patriarchy, but it's there. So I don't have to do that to my boy. I can hit him in the head and patriarchy will make the pain go away.
Yeah. Because he got his patriarchy membership card in the mail, when he started kindergarten. And
all this does is establish a moral hierarchy with boys on the bottoms and boys on the bottom and girls benefit on the top.
Yeah.
Boys must serve boy. I mean, that's actually redundancy because I'm essentially saying servants must serve.
Yeah.
Servants must serve girls who are the real moral center of society. And that's all that this is doing. It doesn't need logic because it has none. It doesn't need actual proof because it has none. These women are operating off of nothing relating to reality. All it is, the only thing that this does, the only reason why it exists is purely to create two classes of people. Girls, which incidentally always meant child. Children, girls are children. Women are perpetual children served by boys who are perpetual servants.
Yeah.
That's it. That's all it does. There's no other meaning or rationale to this, to what they're doing here.
Well, I will say, because this woman in orange, she said, call body parts what they are. I can agree with that. But that's one of many things that, that's one of many things.
Sprinkle in a little bit of intelligence.
Yeah, no. And I think that's actually a good idea to name body parts what they are. But anyhow, moving on. Sorry, I'm channeling V today.
Say it. Penis. Vagina, no pee-pees and hoo-hoos in my house.
And how we talk about bodies, that also affects how we talk about space, consent, and respect. What we want.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
It does. So you know what? Because here's the thing, right? My friend who explained to her son what a pervert was, a year later, he was cornered in the bathroom at school, in the boys' bathroom at school by a female classmate. Actually, no, she wasn't a classmate. She was 2 grades above him, but her sister was in his kindergarten class. And they cornered him in the bathroom, and they made him pull down his pants, and they essentially told him he had to, and blah blah blah. And you know, they did things, and she was absolutely 100% furious, my friend, because the school did nothing. The school did nothing about this. Absolutely 100% nothing.
Well, why would they? Boys are being listened to by the patriarchy. It doesn't happen.
What bothers me about this is these girls, they eventually, right, after 6 months, displayed a pattern of doing this, right? So you have a grade 3 and a kindergarten age girl, right, displaying a pattern of this, with the older girl being very much sort of dragging her sister along through this. And nobody wanted to even look at it, right? Nobody wanted to even ask themselves, why would these girls be behaving in this way, right? Because to ask themselves that, they would have to admit that these girls are behaving in very predatory ways, right? They don't want to admit that these girls are behaving in these predatory ways. So they never really examined the question of why would 2 girls of this age be behaving in this way? What is going on at home that they are behaving like this? So when you ignore the perpetration of sort of inappropriate, sexual misconduct, real sexual misconduct, not kissing your girlfriend's hand in class when you're 6 years old, right? With your girlfriend who's like, we're going to get married one day, and you kissed her hand in front of the teacher and everybody got like freaked out, right? But cornering male students in the bathroom, younger male students in the bathroom, and telling them, to pull down their pants and then touching them inappropriately, right? The fact that nobody wants to consider that girls sometimes behave that way, right, means that, if you don't admit that they're doing it, then you have no reason to look at how these girls might have been being victimized at home.
But it's about, ending sexual violence. Not about perpetuating a narrative that establishes one group of people as the moral superiors of another.
Yeah, no, it's totally not about that. It's about ending sexual violence, even though we're going to ignore multiple incidents of young girls.
Yeah, we're going to ignore symptoms of sexual abuse.
Yeah.
When they don't buy in, when they don't follow our narrative.
Yeah.
We're just going to ignore that because it doesn't follow our narrative. And you know what, guys? Everybody who's listening, these people aren't about ending sexual violence. They're not about ending sexism. They're about establishing, this is the only thing they want to do, is they want to establish a status quo with one group of people as the moral superiors of another. And that's it.
Yeah, essentially. And it doesn't matter whether those moral superiors are actually morally defunct, maybe for a reason, maybe because they were being sexually abused at home. It doesn't, because we're not going to look at their behavior. We're not going to, and because we don't look at their behavior, because we don't examine it, we won't have to look at, we won't ever have to offer these particular women or girls any kind of help as far as what's going on in their home, because, okay, we would
They are
love to do that.
collateral damage.
If we were to do that, we would have to admit that girls are actually capable. Young girls are actually capable of sexually predatory behavior.
We have to actually acknowledge that boys can be victims of sexually predatory behavior. So collateral damage. I mean, that's just friendly fire. These girls who probably will never get help for the possible sexual abuse that they endure because no one will recognize that as a symptom of sexual abuse. Friendly fire. Sorry, not collateral damage. Collateral damage are the victims, the boys that got victimized by them.
Yeah,
this friendly fire. They're going to get shot in the head by feminist friendly fire.
Yeah, they're being fragged.
They're being fragged. All right.
All right.
These people are totally morally bankrupt. They care about nothing but their ideology.
Yeah. No, it's absolutely obscene.
Respect. What we watch and read at home matters too. There are smart, active, determined girls on television and in books, like Pippi Longstocking, Ladybug Girl, Grace for President, Dr. Stephens.
Can I point something out? Since this narrative, this feminist narrative, oh God, every single freeze frame makes them look like awful. Like they're spitting venom or just glowing with contempt.
Yeah.
But, ever since this feminist narrative that girls are ostracized from the working world has really captured the imagination, we have seen fewer women in STEM.
Yep.
And I don't know if it's causal or if it's just correlation, but you guys haven't helped.
No.
You haven't done a damn thing. And you've made it potentially you've made it worse. Because you're constant, even when you focus on girls being capable, you never focus on this idea that girls are moral agents to the same level as boys.
Yeah, or that they're capable of adapting to an environment that wasn't constructed specifically for them.
Yeah, they're constantly victims. And the real sacrifice in all this is that girls are not moral agents to the same level of boys. They don't have to take responsibility. You know what's interesting about the 1950s? Because women in STEM, and this is the one issue that feminists seem to be really sticking in their craw lately. Women in STEM peaked in '85, but that would have meant that we were doing something right in education, K through 12, and university education from the 1950s, 1960s, and 1970s in order for women to peak in STEM in the 80s. We had to be doing something right in the 3 decades prior. All right? We were doing something right in 1950 that we are no longer doing right for girls. And what the fuck was it that we were doing right in 1950? My theory is the thing that we were doing right in 1950 is we were presenting STEM and going into STEM as a civic duty. So we were saying to girls, and we would if you look at the ads of those times, you would see female scientists just doing their thing, not being noteworthy, simply doing their civic duty, which was to go into STEM and turn the U.S. into a technological powerhouse. That, I think, was what really spoke to girls in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. The idea that they were doing their civic duty by becoming scientists, that they were doing something for society. I think that still motivates girls. Maybe it motivates girls more than boys. Maybe boys are much more interested in just what they can do, and girls are more interested in the positive sense. Girls are more motivated by being able to do something beneficial for society.
I think actually they are. I think, if you look at the history of, especially the women who were able to not be on the job, right? Because women have always worked, right? Working class women have always worked. But the women who were not on the job were often like spearheading activism. They were heading up charities. They were the head of their PTA. They organized neighborhood initiatives. They did all of these things. They were very, very much without pay, on a volunteer basis. They were very, very much interested in helping out their communities, being civic-minded, doing all of these things, right? And they may have gotten all kinds of benefits from that, including like status and, the ability to crow about, all the committees that you're on and all of those things, right? But there was very much an ethic of women sort of having a responsibility to donate their time to their communities. And now you don't see that so much. It's more about what the gift culture among women is gone, right?
Well, yeah. And if you think about it, if that was like one really huge motivating factor for women to improve and strengthen their communities, getting rid of that would destroy and weaken communities. It might be useful for big government, big business,
Yeah.
you know, big media to do that. And the other thing is that if women were motivated through civic duty to go into STEM fields, so what? If that's what motivates them, women, by presenting them as moral agents who choose the right path for their communities, I think that's beneficial. Then use that. Don't use what feminism's doing, which is doing exactly the opposite. They're taking what motivates women to do something, apparently, in my theory. This is just my theory. Don't freak out, guys, that women are more motivated to go into STEM when they feel like it's a civic duty. They're taking what motivates women and they're turning it right around and saying, no, it's society's duty to get women in STEM, not women's duty to society to go into STEM. And what's happened? Half the number of women go into STEM because I think women are motivated to be moral agents. They're motivated by narrative that casts them as moral agents. I think there's a part of women who are motivated like that because I think there's a part of all humans who are motivated like that. You know, and I'm going to get this out. Sorry, Karen, this may take a little while. I'm going to get this out. When I say that these women are raising slaves, I'm not talking about men being oppressed by society as a whole in a way that women aren't. I am actually talking about a dynamic that also hurts women. Because when you put women at the center of belonging and when you say that men don't have any belonging to give women, you're saying that women have no one to belong to. It's such a fucking isolating thing to say to women and girls.
Yeah.
That they have nothing. There's no way that they can earn a sense of belonging in their communities, in their societies, and with their husbands. Nothing. They don't do anything to earn that sense of belonging. And for social species like us, who have, every single one of us has an innate need to earn belonging. You're essentially saying that women and girls belong to nothing.
Well, no, but what they're saying is women and girls
feminism
belong to feminism. And what frustrates me so much about this is like, because when you look at activism, right, just social justice activism, all the various forms of activism, you invariably see women you know, like participating in that, women, you know, spearheading campaigns, even Stephanie Guthrie, right? As much as I can't stand that bitch and I think she's wrongheaded and an absolute 100% cunt, right? She's out there doing activism work. She's doing advocacy work for something that she seems to believe in, right? This is actually something that has been a part of women for so long. I mean, even, and here's the thing, right? This involved bringing a casserole to that, you know, widower 3 doors down who just lost his wife, right? This is what women used to do. This is how women used to bring communities together. They used to essentially form the basis of community, was by essentially participating in sort of a gift culture of philanthropy, donating their time to causes that they believe in, right? Feminism wants all of that urge on the part of women to either be expressed in self-interest, right? The interest of the woman to rake in, you know, down to the last tenth of a penny, exactly what a man does, and have, you know, be the woman who makes Congress 50-50 men and women, right? They want those things, but they also want all of women's sort of natural tendency toward community and philanthropy within their communities to benefit feminism, to benefit the ideology. They don't want women wasting their time, you know, volunteering in boys' clubs, right? Volunteering in programs that help prevent young men, like 12-year-old boys from being vulnerable to gangs, right? They don't want to have these women participating in sandwich programs and breakfast programs at schools where both boys and girls benefit, marginalized boys and girls both benefit. No, they want all of the attention, all of the effort, all of that urge, I think, that women have to almost a nesting instinct that I want to transform my community into something that's more attractive, more safe, more pleasant, more friendly, all of those things that women have always done. They want all of that to go to benefit this fucking gender war that they have.
The feminism. They want it all to go to feminism. And they want women to generate a sense of belonging from feminism. So instead of seeing men and women as two complementary wholes who reflect each other, so men reflect some of the worst aspects of women, but also some of the best, and vice versa. And together we can achieve great things. Instead, feminism wants to sort of insert itself in there and say, no, men should seek their belonging from women, but women shouldn't seek their belonging from men. Women should seek their belonging from feminism. And then everything is sewn up tight. And we have an ideological echo chamber.
Well, what bothers me too is, this sort of assumption on the part of modern women that, anything that I do expressly for my boyfriend's comfort, right? For his comfort, for his ease, right? And he brings in 2/3 of the income, right? And he doesn't do anything around the house really, but I barely do anything around the house, and he's prepared to live with that, right? But I do invest a significant amount of time in making his life comfortable, particularly considering he works very, very long hours and he has a disability that makes that difficult, and it makes it painful for him, right? And so I have very much embraced this sort of idea that part of my role in this partnership is to make his role as easy as possible and as less costly as possible as I can, right, to him. And he does the same for me in a variety of ways, none of which involve housework. But the very act of me actually catering to his needs in any way whatsoever seems to be like this, in feminism's narrative, I'm demeaning myself. I'm absolutely 100% demeaning myself by bringing him a coffee every morning. I get up 20 minutes before him. I make the pot of coffee. I bring him a coffee and something to eat in the morning before he gets up, because getting his ass out of bed, given what he has to deal with, is an extremely difficult thing. It can be a 45-minute process, right? And so I do that for him, right? Because I appreciate what he does for us. And they would see that as me demeaning myself.
And conversely, if you're a woman like myself who's more okay with taking the majority financial role, and your partner simply helps you maintain the kind of I don't know, level of output. Yeah, but by taking care of everything else.
You're obviously carrying him. He's a bum.
Yeah, he's a bum. So, no matter what, unless a man is paying for everything and doing all the housework, that's essentially the only position that he could possibly be in that he would not be a bum or a user.
Yeah, or coordinating you.
If the only position a group of people can be in is constant work, they're slaves. If the only legitimate position that they can occupy is spending every single second of their day serving another human being, they're slaves.
Yeah. I'm going to take 15 seconds. You keep ranting. I got to let my dog out.
You're a slave to that damn bitch.
Yeah, I know.
I could hear her coughing and farting in the background for anyway. So it's like, this is the position that these women are setting up for men. Every single moment of the day, in order to prevent being labeled as an abuser or a user or a deadbeat bum, men have to be at work. So there's no rest, no possible rest for men. The only other situation in history that resembles this, that resembles the role that these women that men want to occupy, was slaves.
Yep.
That's
No.
it.
I keep thinking of a friend of a friend who when he got married, he was already working 50, 60 hours a week, sort of upper middle management, big corporation. And the woman he married was working in administration in the medical profession, right? And so they both had 6-figure salaries, and they bought a house that, sort of the maximum house that they could afford and still be able to go on vacations and have nice things and stuff like that. They bought this house with the understanding that this sort of dual contribution financially to the household would continue, right? And then they had a kid, and she didn't just take the maximum allowable maternity leave, which is very, very generous. I think it's like 2 years now in Canada. And her maternity leave, which is I think about 2/3, you get 2/3 of your previous income. It was topped up by her employer to essentially so that she was earning, or she was bringing in as much as she had been when she was working. After that ended, she decided she didn't want to go back to work. And so she took almost an entire year off without any income coming in from her side of things. And then when she went back to work, she decided she only wanted to do it part-time. And because of her previous position, it was in administration. You can't be in administration part-time. You just can't. So she had to take a different position that was lower on the totem pole, paid less per hour, and she was working about half the hours that she had been previously. So we're looking at, she was bringing in now 1/3 or 1/4 of the income she had been. And then, so of course, he suggests, that they sell the house and move to a smaller house that they can more readily afford on the income that they're bringing. She doesn't want to do that. No, she does not want to step back in lifestyle. And then he starts looking out for any promotional opportunities, right? Any opportunities to move up within his company or to jump companies, right? So he presents her a couple of, they're willing to pay me. These guys are willing to pay me $50,000 more a year. We just have to move to, Saskatoon or whatever. And she's like, I don't want to move to Saskatoon. That's a hick town. It's not even a city. And
fuck you.
I know. It's not even a city. It's a hick town. And I don't want to be away from my family, my parents. Right. And so that's off limits. Right. And then, so he's putting in longer and longer hours at the office so that he can bill for the overtime and support the lifestyle that she's grown accustomed to. But that she's no longer willing to actually equally contribute to. And she's complaining now that he's not home enough. And when, we went out with, I was out with him and a bunch of friends one night, and he was getting constant texts from her. You need to call your parents, because she was on her sort of girls' night or whatever. Without the kids. The kid was at his parents' house. You need to call your parents and, check up on our son. And he's like, why? I don't feel any need to. Like, if you want to know how he's doing every hour, then you call them. No, that's not her job. It's his job. And it's just this nightmare of entitlement, where she's complaining that they can't have the nice things that they once had, and they can't go on the types of vacations that they once had. And every time he goes to work more hours so that she can have those things she's demanding and complaining that she doesn't have, she then complains that he's not home enough, right? And she's unhappy, and he doesn't help enough with the kid, and blah, 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 blah. And he really is in this position where, like, he feels completely powerless, right? He feels like a big, powerful man in his job, right? but he feels completely inadequate with his wife, right? So, of course, he's not going to want to spend a whole lot of time at home because, you know, at least if he spends all of his time at work, right, the money's coming in to fund the lifestyle she demands, right? And he even if she continues to bitch at him, there's a limited amount of hours in the day that she can do that if he's at the office all the time. And she doesn't think that she owes him anything.
Well, she doesn't, because that's his role. He's the slave.
I think so.
This is what these women. This is what they're. These women are creating men who will fulfill that role.
Mm-hmm.
That won't say at some point, no, bitch, no more. I'm gonna let the credit cards run up. I'm gonna let our debts get big. In fact, guess what? We'll declare bankruptcy, and I'm gonna get a smaller job. And you can make. Oh, I guess he'll still be on the hook legally. Shit. Yeah, and this is it. This is the society that we have built, and this is the society that these women have justified. Is that a man is unacceptable. His existence is unacceptable unless 24/7 he is listening to and working for women. And they can justify it by saying, well, the patriarchy gives him everything. We don't have to listen to him. The patriarchy listens to him. We don't have to work for him. The patriarchy works for him. We don't have to care about his problems. The patriarchy takes care of those. How fucking convenient.
Yeah.
All right, let's move the fuck on.
Okay. I'm gonna. Okay, my dog stopped barking, so I can leave her out.
To express your feelings with words, not anger. Girls cry.
What? Express your feelings with words, not anger? Okay. Sometimes words are angry.
I guess she's saying that men are responsible for. It's an allusion to domestic violence.
I think so.
So she's saying that, use your words instead of your fists to express anger. But girls, that's okay. They can use their fists.
Oh, whatever.
It's irrelevant.
And boys cry. We all have feelings inside that need to come out, and that's okay. Look, I told
but wait.
Male tears are so delicious.
Yeah, but that's the thing. They just said that boys have to listen to girls because patriarchy listens to boys, basically. So boys are crying now. Do girls have to listen to them or not listen to them? Because nobody's going to cry if nobody listens to them crying. The point of crying is to demonstrate to the people around you that you're upset. Yeah. And if you know that nobody's going to listen to you, or people are going to actively mock you, or just in this instance, let's just go with the not listening. People are not going to listen to you because they've been in cult. They believe that patriarchy listens to you, so they don't have to. That you're responsible. You're responsible for listening to girls. You've just established that role. You've essentially said boys are responsible to listen to girls, and presumably what you believe is boys are already listened to by patriarchy. So if boys have the role to listen to girls, boys can't listen when they're crying. But this self-contradictory bullshit. It's essentially just another way of implicating, making not only do men have to work, boys have to listen to girls and judge themselves by how they treat girls and make sure that they're benefiting girls as much as possible. Not only that, but the way that you deal with that social role emotionally, boys can't have that either. They have to be judged for that, because if you're going to put your needs last, you are adopting a role of stoicism, which means you don't cry, you suck it up, so you can psychologically handle that kind of level of sacrifice. You're simultaneously saying that men need to sacrifice, or boys need to sacrifice. They need to listen to girls. They need to be stoic so girls can feel like they're listened to. It's sort of an aspect of stoicism, is being able to listen to someone else while shutting up. You have to embody that. Not only do you have to embody the benefits of stoicism to girls, you have to feel bad that you're expected to be stoic, so you've adopted the posture of stoicism. You guys are fucking, you are I'm not going to say cunts. You are acting
they're putting
like such privileged cunts.
They're putting boys in an impossible position because, yes, girls cry and boys cry, but if the mere act of boys speaking silences girls, then what does a boy crying do? Also silences girls.
Yes, because girls can't cry in that instance. They can't be paid attention to.
Yeah, no, because all the attention will be paid to the whiny
boy.
baby and his male tears, right?
So they essentially you want boys to put girls first 24/7, at the same time as you want boys to behave like girls, even though girls aren't expected. They aren't expected to engage in the kind of stoicism necessary to put another person first 24/7. You want men, like Karen's friend's wife. You want him to work hard enough to pay for your fucking lifestyle, but at the same time be as emotionally open as a person who isn't being treated like a convenience.
Yeah, emotionally open and available and there.
Yeah, but emotionally open and there, despite the fact you're treating him like a fucking convenience.
Not even that. Despite the fact that, you have needs and he is doing what he can to provide for them. And that might mean he's at work 12 hours a day. And then he comes home and you complain that he's not there enough. Like he's just not home enough.
Well, fair enough. I mean, that's a legitimate complaint. It's myopic. But at the same time, she's not accepting the fact that she is making these choices to treat him not like a person, but like a convenience.
Yeah.
And then she expects at the end of the day that he is not going to act like she's treating him like a convenience.
Yeah.
That is...
Mm-hmm. All right, moving on.
My kids, use your words for good.
No one ever said being a parent was easy, but it's work that needs to be done, and we're going to do it, damn it. We are going to parent a generation of boys that are part of the solution rather than the problem.
Holy fucking God! Holy fucking God! If I was... Oh, Jesus fucking Christ! I fucking cannot... They went there. They fucking went there. They just put it out. They just laid their shit out. Just fucking long line of fucking shit. Unbuffed.
Boys are the problem. Boys are the
problem. They are the problem unless you intervene to establish the fucking hierarchy by stomping on their head and telling them that they are immoral little fuckers, right? You gotta stomp on their head and make sure they take responsibility, adult responsibility. 3-year-old boy needs to take fucking adult responsibility for violence against women. Is that it? That's exactly it, isn't it? My fucking God, I am so fucking pissed right now. Don't worry, anybody who's listening, I am a rage professional. I know how to channel this shit. No. They went there, Karen. They fucking went there.
They did. Boys are the problem.
Boys are the problem. Unless feminism, right?
Like what?
Unless you stomp on their fucking head and tell them where they exist in the moral fucking pecking order.
Like, why don't these women ever, make a video about how they're raising their girls to be independent? Why aren't they making videos, about how they're raising their girls to be able to weather the fact that boy in their class called out the answer without raising his hand, right? And she knew the answer too, and she was waiting patiently, and why aren't they saying, that's not you're not being victimized by that. Okay, it made you feel bad because you didn't get to give the answer, but maybe try shouting out. Maybe actually try shouting out once in a while. Maybe try using some of the, imitating. If you want to be like the boys, maybe imitate the boys. Maybe toughen up a little. Not expect things to be done for you. Do them yourselves, right?
Engage in the kind of engage in the kind of self-policing that allows boys to do more.
Yeah. Like
Like,
you know,
set aside your emotions.
yeah. You know, or you know, allow your excitement.
Look at her. Look at her. She looks like she's fucking rubbing one out. She's like, oh, I get to stomp on my boy's head. Oh, it feels so good.
Oh my goodness, maybe it's
Oh, it feels so good to put that little kid in his place. Oh, that feels good. I get to vomit all my rage out on my son and feel moral while I do it.
maybe it's just
I'll vomit all my contempt, really.
maybe the expression is just like where we froze the
Move it a little forward. See if it.
Feminism isn't
Oh, okay, that's even worse.
yeah.
Come on, Karen. This isn't something that's just accidental anymore. We're always freezing on a frame where they look that they just have this incredible expression of smug contempt.
Yeah.
It's that supercilious, smug contempt. This is the constant expression on these women's faces. It's not even on the woman, the I am disappoint woman, the libertarian. She had the same fucking expression.
Yeah.
And this is exactly where this expression comes out. This is exactly where this expression comes out. When they are shoving men's hands down and curb stomping them. When they're establishing their superiority as being morally superior to men. That's when the contempt comes out.
Not superiority, superiority.
Superiority to men. This is the high that these women are getting. They are establishing themselves as moral superiors, higher in the moral pecking order than men. These women are fucking bullies, and you can see it on their fucking faces. They're enjoying this. They're enjoying shoving men's faces down and rubbing them into the shit. They're enjoying it. They're enjoying this. This is the fucking face of this gynocentrism.
Yeah. No, now that like we just randomly stopped at another place and came up with an even worse facial expression, I'm willing to give you the yeah. Okay, but given that I need to go back a little bit because I missed what she was saying.
problem. Because feminism isn't just about women, it's about everyone. It is about
it's about everyone.
Yeah, no, it is about everyone. It's about establishing women as a superior class of people and establishing men as their servants and sort of whipping boys.
And look at this same fucking expression.
Yeah.
It's like none of these expressions.
I mean, look at this. I would actually kill to have arms like that and shoulders.
Well, she has time. She's got the time to do that, and possibly also has like a.
Even look at her lats; they're like very, very well defined. I would really love to be as toned as her. I don't have the energy or the motivation to do it, but I would love to look like that.
Jesus. Well, I certainly wouldn't love to have that expression on my face.
No. We're just like cutting off her head and just looking at her.
Yeah.
You know, but this is a personal trainer, actually, probably. Even looking at this here, that little muscle, that's she's worked on that. This one here, right? She's worked on those. Oh my goodness. That's sexy. You know, if you cut her head off, put someone else's head on. So, yeah. Moving on. Okay. Feminism is for everyone, especially for little boys.
Okay, so can I point out the obvious here?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so this is on Huffpost, and the only people, well, we're part of the few people who actually speak back to this. And in fact, we're probably the few women who are actually responding back to this. And yet, somehow the women, like me and you, Karen, we advocate to listening to men and caring about their issues. And somehow the women of HuffPost have got it in their head that they don't represent society as a whole, despite the obvious power differential in the platforms, the relative platforms.
Yeah. You know, it's absolutely, you know, here's the thing, right? Because when you look at Canada's Charter of Rights and Freedoms, and you look at you know what it says, everybody is equal and no one shall be discriminated against on the basis of sex. And then directly under that clause, there is another clause saying, you know, this is only provisionally the case, given that some groups have been historically oppressed, right? And of course, you know, in 1980, that group that had been historically oppressed, that sex that had been historically oppressed, was 100% considered to be women. And so every single time feminism, which was well funded even back then, managed to launch a legal challenge or a lawsuit or file an amicus brief or something in any particular legal case, they set case law, they set precedents, they reinforced the existing case law that women are to be considered a historically disprivileged group, right? And therefore it is perfectly fine to discriminate in their favor against males. And males are increasingly less and less deserving of protection under the charter, right? Because of all of the case law. And then so you essentially have this situation where, as feminism and the women's lobby has gotten more and more powerful, and as women have gotten more and more power within society, you have a situation where the case law stating that they're underprivileged, that they're marginalized, that they're historically disprivileged, right? That body of case law, because of the amount of public support and money and all of this stuff and the political power that they have, right, has been increasing all of this time. You actually have a situation where there is a class that is arguably privileged, right, that has a body of case law that's 30 years in the making, stating that they are disprivileged. They are historically still underprivileged, that they deserve extra special treatments and privileges and exemptions and all of these things, right? How do you reverse that? How on earth do you reverse that? Right? When the group that has, you know, when you have allowed in your constitution essentially that historically underprivileged groups are deserving of special exemptions and privileges, once you overshoot equality, once you overshoot things to and you have a body of case law to back it up, that you know, that this one narrative that you're underprivileged, right? And you overshoot equality, how do you reverse that?
I can't actually talk.
Why can't you talk?
Because of the mute thing. Oh, I can talk now. I mean, I don't know. I think you reverse it one step at a time. You reverse it. In fact, when I look at this, the only thing I can think of is to appeal to women directly to stop.
I think that's probably the case too. I mean, it's so disheartening to see women saying, you know, I'm going to raise my 3-year-old to prioritize women specifically, like to prioritize other people, to have a sense of social responsibility, to have a sense of civic duty, to have a sense of, you know, loyalty and commitment to his country or a set of values or principles. Sure.
But even at 3, that's a little early.
Well, even so, it's never too early to promote pro-social behavior in your kids, and a sense of fairness and a sense of acknowledging that other people are people too. But at the same time, to actually just specifically single out girls and women, and his class, right? I guess his social designation, right, as male, for specific roles, he has a requirement, he has an obligation to serve the other, not on a set of principles, but because they are, girls, because they are women. That's horrifying to me. It's because it doesn't allow for changes in circumstance. It doesn't allow for any situation in which women might actually become the privileged class, and men might become overwhelmingly the marginalized class. And at the same time, you're still raising your sons to serve women and girls. Yeah.
I think that, there's no provision for recognizing when you freaking overshoot the mark. And I don't think there's intended to be, because I don't think this is about creating equality. I think it's about maintaining a particular situation where women are men's moral betters, and feminism is simply it's simply the same kind of thing that you see in a lot of religion, where they center women as men's moral betters because, for whatever reason, I think in Christianity, because women are closer, gave birth to God. But there is that thread. I mean, I apologize to Christians who are listening, but there is that thread in Christianity that women are your moral betters. And although there is also a little bit of a balance to that, in that they have to serve and at least be pro-social in the context of in the Christian community. But feminism is simply about maintaining that moral superiority of women over men, and then not recognizing that it exists, not recognizing the effects of it, or even how white women's moral superiority, the fact that they were placed in a central position as morally superior, led to things, racist attitudes and behaviors, like lynching, like the Jim Crow, that gave the moral authority, the anointed those behaviors as acceptable, because white women were, in those communities, the moral centers of their society. And you present something.
You can complain that that this type of sort of seating the moral center of society in women was not something that was chosen by women, but women did astoundingly little. At least feminism did astoundingly little to essentially say, yeah, no, you're not going to use me as an excuse to lynch people. You're not going to, use me as an excuse to marginalize other groups. You're not going to use me as an excuse to hate blacks. You're not going to use me as an excuse to go to war. You're not going to use me in those ways. Ironically, it seems like it's among societies that we in the West would see as backwards, where women have actually stepped up. The Kurdish women who are fighting ISIS, there are women out there who have stepped up and said, we're not just fighting for women, we're fighting for our men too. We're fighting against this oppressive force. We're fighting for everybody's freedom, right? And yes, we have a special concern for women, right? Because we are women, but we're fighting not just for our sisters and our daughters and our mothers, we're fighting for our brothers and our sons and our fathers as well, right? It seems to be that as society gets more comfortable and safe and cozy and relaxed, that feminists seem to think that women no longer need to have any of that. They no longer need to display any of that responsibility to their societies, that duty to anyone but themselves, or feminism itself.
The biggest response from, I guess, white women to the racism, like the extreme racism. And Jim Crow is one thing, lynching was another. And it wasn't just extreme racism that resulted in lynching. It was also other forms of misandry, and specifically misandry. It was the intersection between a man being expendable and being part of an undesirable class. So you'd see Italians being lynched, you'd see Irish being lynched, you'd see poor men being lynched, marginal men being lynched. And the one response to lynching, specifically the Emmett Till lynching, where, if you don't know the circumstances surrounding it, Emmett was a young black boy, young black man, who basically made a pass at a white woman. She chased him around with a gun, but failed to kill him. So she went and she got her brother and her husband to finish the job. And so Emmett Till ended up, I believe, being hung and thrown into a river. Do you imagine that?
He wasn't just hung. He was hung, and then he was beaten until he was unrecognizable, and then I think that he was set on fire, and then he was thrown into a river.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this woman, this white woman, initiated that, and she had the power to initiate that because of her moral superiority in the societies that she occupied. Because when she pointed a finger and said, that person there,
well, here's
harmed me.
Here's the thing. He was flirting with her, right? She didn't like it, right? He hit on her. She didn't like it. And then apparently when these men accosted him and confronted him with his behavior, they discovered that he had actually had sex with other white women, or according to him, according to Emmett, he had managed to seduce other white women, right? And so that was essentially, according to the testimony of these men who did this, they were just going to beat him up. They were just going to rough him up until they actually discovered that he had deflowered a white woman somewhere, according to his own, I guess, braggadocio, that he had managed to convince a white woman to.
Or maybe they were just trying to make an excuse.
Maybe they were, right? But regardless, the excuse seems, to be perfectly in line with all of this stuff that we talk about.
But where I was going with that was Susan Brown Miller's response to this. So it was a white woman in response to the fact that white women could point a finger and get marginalized men destroyed, like not just ostracized, but killed. This is the power of what these women in this video are establishing. This is the power of the moral hierarchy, which women in this video are establishing themselves as the top of. That they can point at a man, a marginalized man, and say, that one, and then the men who are members of their society will go and kill that man. This is her response to that. Susan Brown Miller's response. And that's a key element of the violence of racism, is white women's moral superiority. And specifically in this instance, white women's moral superiority in Southern society. Key element of justifying and targeting racism. You know what Susan Brown Miller said? She said that the woman who got Emmett Till murdered was part of a system of oppression. She was a victim of oppression, of objectification, not just by Emmett Till, but also by the people whom her husband and her brother who murdered him. She was a victim of a system of patriarchal sexual oppression that treated her like an object to be won, like sexual property. So Emmett Till treated her like sexual property, and those white men who enacted the violence that she initiated, they concluded on Emmett Till, they were treating her like sexual property. Therefore, she and Emmett and Susan Brown Miller, being part of the same class of people, doesn't have to take responsibility for the racism that was the moral superiority, the position of women as men's moral superiors, and the racism that they enabled through that position. She doesn't have to take responsibility for it, and neither does any other feminist, because they deny it exists, even while they're perpetuating it. Yeah. Even while they're creating fucking videos that are establishing how they are perpetuating it on their sons, how
Yeah.
they're teaching their sons to regard women and themselves as their moral superiorities, as their betters in the moral hierarchy, as they are fucking shoving their boots down on their sons and telling them exactly where they lie in the moral pecking order. Feminists are denying the racist implications of that moral pecking order in the past. They're saying that no, it wasn't the white woman saying that Emmett Till was a man who should be sacrificed. That wasn't the case. She was actually the victim. That's what feminism does.
Agreed. It's absolutely it's astounding how they feminism doesn't want to admit the power that women have. And that's because the moment that they admit it, they have to admit that they themselves have power, a huge amount of power in society as a political lobby and a social force, and that they have been exploiting the very, very, the very traditional norms of, traditional societies in order to cultivate and consolidate that power.
And enhance it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the fucking thing is, what's really disgusting, I just got to get this out, Karen. What's really fucking disgusting is that these women want to continue that power, that ability to point at a man and say he did it and then have him lynched. They want to continue it in law. They want to continue it at colleges. And they want to continue to be able to do this to poor and minority men. They're just willing to sacrifice their brothers and fathers and sons to do it, to continue to have that fucking power.
Well, they're raising their sons to do exactly what that woman's husband and brother did to Emmett Till, aren't they?
Yes. And they're willing to sacrifice them just to continue this. And look at their fucking faces. Every time we paused, it was a face of utter contempt. Utter fucking contempt. Look at those faces.
Moral superiority and contempt and just absolute hubris. Yeah.
It's utter contempt. They are treating their own sons. They're talking about teaching their sons with those looks of contempt. That's what they're doing. They're looking at those looks of contempt. They're talking about teaching their sons to be their girls' moral inferiors.
This reminds me of a video that I did called "Those Privileged Blue Bundles of Joy," right? Where I was discussing an article that was written by a feminist who essentially said that, when you're pregnant and you know that you're going to have a boy, one of the worries that you have is that you're gestating a rapist, a future rapist. You're gestating somebody who's going to violate and victimize women in the future. And I was just like, how is that healthy? Like, I remember being pregnant. I absolutely remember being pregnant. And I remember, all of the, when I was pregnant with my daughter and she would absolutely not allow me to ever sleep on my right side. The moment I rolled over onto my right side, she would start kicking and kicking and kicking, and I'd have to roll back over, and all of the, like, sort of the difficulties and the inconveniences and all of these things that, when you're pregnant, but those difficulties and inconveniences, you weather them, and you feel like at the point where the pregnancy is over and you have a baby in your arms, it's all going to be worth it, because you're going to have this absolutely 100% perfect child. And this child is not going to end up perfect, because no child grows into a perfect adult. They just don't. But you have this little bundle of potential, right? And it's completely, purely innocent. And it's completely, purely helpless and dependent on you. And to actually be able to look at that swollen, wrinkled up face full of broken capillaries from passing through the birth canal and actually say, I sure don't hope you grow up to become a rapist. I don't understand how any woman could think that, unless maybe I could see it if the child was a product of rape, right? If the pregnancy was the result of a rape, I could see a woman maybe having those kinds of thoughts, right? But to have those thoughts about your child just because he was born with a penis, right? I don't, how does a woman even think that way about a 7-pound helpless little ball of, of wrinkly flesh and vernix and meconium and gummy smiles and gas and needing to be burped and all of those things. How does a woman even imagine those things?
Well, it's you're seeing them with their smiles of contempt as they talk about teaching their boys to be their moral inferiors.
It seems so sick to me, just as a mother, like even just knowing, as a mother, your kid's not going to turn out perfect because they never do, but you definitely don't, just like no woman, no girl thinks at age 5, when I grow up, I want to be a junkie, right? It's not something that you necessarily you would never actually project that into the future of your daughter, right? When my daughter grows up, I'm worried that she's going to be a junkie. I'm worried that she's going to be, I'm worried that she's going to falsely accuse someone of rape. I'm worried that she's going to have borderline personality disorder and abuse her husband. You don't have those thoughts about your daughters. Why are some women having those thoughts about their sons when they're just a day old? I don't, or not even out of the womb yet. I don't fucking understand it. It's not okay. It's not healthy. It's fucked up.
Well, like I said, I mean, just look at the smiles of utter glee and contempt on their faces. And I know you didn't necessarily initially agree with me, but then we just randomly chose another, and it was just the same fucking expression.
Yeah.
These are people who are enjoying the thought of emotionally abusing their sons and putting them in their place, teaching them that they are moral inferiors to girls. They're enjoying the thought, or they're fucking drugged out of the brains. I don't know, one or the other. But I hope that these women, I hope that their contempt keeps them warm at night. Their contempt for men. Because ultimately they belong to nothing.
I think it will, and I think that they have about a 20% chance that their sons will grow up to be mindless servants for them and their cause, and an 80% chance of growing up to be extremely resentful and cut off ties and all.
Well, let's put it this way, Karen. With us, they have I think before before the internet and before people like us and I guess the bigger ones, Sargon, Milo, etc., they would probably not have had that 80% chance of growing up to resent their mothers. But
I don't know, because when you look at the people who arrive at our men's rights and stuff, so many of them were raised by feminist mothers to be good feminists.
I know, but so many men, period, are apparently raised by feminist mothers now, or single mothers. So, I mean, it's like that might just be a function of how many people are being raised in this manner.
Yeah, maybe.
But I would say that, yeah, hopefully we find your sons in the future, Huffpo women. Well, we find your sons in the future and we explain to them they can just watch the expressions on your face as you describe, teaching them that they're responsible for all the ills in the world, that they are the problem.
Yeah, and it's their responsibility to fix themselves.
Yeah, Just they can watch the smiles of contempt on your face as you describe telling them that they are the problem. And
Right.
I do hope that contempt keeps you warm at night, because I imagine your sons aren't going to be talking to you much after that.
Well, I would hope.
And what would it matter to you anyway? You don't get your sense of belonging from your male relatives, because if you did, you would never fucking do that.
Mm-hmm.
You would never do that to them. Anyway, I'm so fucking pissed I don't even want to shill, so I'm just gonna stop.
Okay.
Good night, everyone, or evening. And don't forget, we have another show in a few hours. And subscribe if you enjoy this.